अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः.
Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
Good night.
Welcome to Yogananda podcast. We're going through autobiography line by line, and today we're starting with the music. Not just the music, it's a very important chant. Mike, what does it mean?
I will tell you. It means, Lord, he whose form is one whole, which is indivisible, present everywhere, pervades both bodily and spirit manifestation. Guru, he who has seen the feet of such Lord and experienced the oneness. Salutation, O Blessed One.
Beautifully read. Yes, so it is the Guru. It is the Guru. Puja is part of the Guru Puja. And I remember a few episodes ago when we discussed the whole Guru salutations to the Guru, and in that long footnote, we did a bit of chanting there. But this is something that also comes. So this chant is done in YSS in India in special occasions, during special kirtans and special auspicious days. And it is a raga, which is the most simple of ragas. It's called Bilawal raga, which is basically has all the notes, it's the simple notes from A to G. So there's that. So we're going to talk about, the reason we're going to talk about this episode in a bit of detail, and it is important, it's not just a dry theoretical subject. It's very relevant because Chris is going to read out, there's a small section in this section that we're going to go through today, which sums it up quite nicely. Chris, you want to read it out?
The ancient rishis discovered these laws of sound alliance between nature and man. Because nature is an objectification of Om, the primal sound or vibratory word, man can obtain control over all natural manifestations through the use of certain mantras or chants.
And there it is. So if it's essentially, Guruji is saying we can use sound and vibrations, and ancient Indians have done that. Ancient yogis have done that to connect to God. So this is why we're starting with that, and this is why we're going to place some emphasis on it. But Chris, how did we get here? What was in the previous episode?
In the previous episode, we looked at the religious festivities that were occurring with Sri Yukteswar in Serampore at the hermitage there. Guruji described it very nicely for us. And it was a very, how did we describe it? It was a fairy tale type event in some ways, with hundreds of devotees, possibly thousands of folks being fed. So we touched on the topic of service, and we had some readings on service, what it meant to have your life being chiefly service. We also looked at these kirtans and the Samaveda, and really what we had a nice reading from the Bhagavad Gita on this. We talked a little bit about Saraswati, the goddess of wisdom, and we teed up the instrumental theme of this chapter therein.
Indeed. I tried to chant a Saraswati chant, but that didn't come out well, so we had to delete that. But hopefully you saw the YouTube.
I enjoyed it.
Zoom didn't want me to put that out there in the universe. So, but going back to this section, so it starts with Guruji talking in some detail about the ragas and the ancient science of the ragas and the fixed melodic scales. And he says there's 6 basic ragas, which he lists, and then they branch into 126 raginis, which are wives, and putras, which are sons. So 126 variations of the 6 ragas is what I took from that. But you should also note that principally Guruji here is talking about there's 2 types of classical Indian singing and dance. The North Indian style is called Hindustani chanting, Indian classical, and the South Indian style is called Carnatic. And the latter is probably more traditional because it's had less influence from invaders, Central Asian powers, which have had quite mixed, quite a good hybrid mix into the culture in terms of the musical culture and the dance culture. So the same with Kathak and Bharatanatyam. So the dance there's 2 types of classical Indian dancing. You would have seen Kathak, and there's Bharatanatyam, which is the South Indian version. So the Hindustani music, which is what Guruji's defining here through the ancient science, is a bit different. For example, the South has lots of improvisations. It's usually longer, whereas the North, the Hindustani style, is usually structured with use of very specific melodies, and it's a little bit more rigid than the South Indian one. So yeah, there you have it. So the North India has been, if you know history or Indian history, has been quite heavily influenced by the Mughal and the Persian music scene. And if you just look up the history of the sitar, then you'll see how much link there is to ancient Persia, but not so much with like the veena, for example, which they use more predominantly in the South in India. So that's that. So it says the next line is that each raga has a minimum of 5 notes. So now there's a very technical description of this. So you can imagine there's there's seven major notes, and then there's the sharp. There's 5 additional sharp and flat notes as well, which so that makes what 12 notes. But here he's saying that each piece of music in Indian classical uses 5 notes, which is, well, you'd think it's quite limiting, wouldn't you? But not so. So the way they do that is they have a leading note, which is called a vadi, secondary note, and some helping notes, anuvadi, and a dissonant note, vivadi. So that sounds very complex, but there is some help out there. One of my favorite classical Indian singers, his name is Dr. Sriram Parashuram. I'll put a link to him. He has explained this quite beautifully. Listen to this.
They both have to do with an aesthetic concept called resonance. Vadi is where the primary resonance of the raga takes place, is supposed to take place. The samvadi is the note that agrees most with it in terms of realizing the personality of the raga. Vivadi is something which is opposed to the realization of that aesthetic design. So like how for example, in a building structure, you might have the center of gravity, or the fulcrum, or the primary center around which the whole structure is built, right? So the central point is the central note which defines the design of the raga is called the vadi. Samvadi is something which is this second point of reference, which agrees with the first, which supports the first.
So some explanation there. Hopefully that explained it in a little bit more a clearer way, more so than I could have explained it to you. So now so bear that in mind, those 5 notes and those helping, set primary notes and those helpers and dissonant notes. So bear that in mind, because I'm going to play a piece in a second, and that's the chanter is going to first take you through those 5 basic notes in the ascending and the descending scales, which is aroha and then the avaroha, and then he's going to sing the piece, which I'll explain to you as well. So this, now he talks about the basic ragas. Guruji, he says that there's natural correspondence with certain hours of the day, seasons of the year, and also the presiding deity that bestows a particular potency. So now there's 6 ragas, which you can read in your autobiography. There's a Hindola, which is sung in spring and invokes universal love. So remember that element, universal love. There's a Dipaka raga, which is in the summer, and it arouses compassion, another phenomenal spiritual quality. Then there's the Megha raga, which is a melody for midday and the rainy season to summon courage. And again, remember this one, because we're going to, Guruji talks about Densan later in this section, and this raga is important for that discussion. The next one is Bhairava raga, which is sung in August, September, October, and it achieves tranquility. It's sung in the morning. Then there's the Shri raga, which is in autumn, and it gives you pure love, helps you to attain that. And then this is the one we're going to discuss in a bit more detail, is Rag Malkunsa raga, which is heard in late nights and midnights. So I'm approaching that hour now in winter, and it's for valor, for you to experience, you know, to be able to handle winter. So Rag Malkuns. So my my music teacher, Gaurav Mazumdar, he composed a piece which we're going to play. And so remember, we said that raga has, you know, minimum of 5 notes, and all they do is play on those 5 notes, and then they do, you know, they do variations on those 5 notes. And you'd think that that can only compose basic pieces, but that wouldn't be correct. But we'll start with the basic so we can understand this. So listen to this. This is my teacher, and he's singing about Krishna, and we'll give the translation afterwards. So he's going to start with the basic notes and then make it into a piece.
Krishna Murari, Giridhari, Krishna Murari, Giridhari, Paraj Mori, Sunalo Shyam, Paraj Mori, Sunalo
So you just had a small section of the raga. So hopefully you now understand, or like you can put more into some understanding the complex things that Guruji is talking about here, about how making those very basic notes, and those notes are associated with certain qualities and certain times of the year and times of the day to help you achieve a certain quality. And this one is for valor. And you heard it had a very mellow kind of feeling, almost like a sorrowy sort of tone, a sympathetic tone. I hope you heard that there. So Mike, do you want to tell us what it means? I said it was a Krishna chant. It was only half of it, but you can hear what it translates to.
Yeah, it says, "O Krishna, the one who lifted the Govardhana hill, please listen to my humble request. O Sham, show your mercy and grant me a vision of you. My eyes are longing for your sight."
Very beautiful. And it's a prayer. So the whole thing is a prayer. And the rag is known for its tranquil and serene generation of an atmosphere. And it's you know, you play different ragas for different moods or different times that you need certain things in your life. So obviously for people like us that may not know all this, Guruji has very beautifully summarized here, because he could have, it feels like he's gone into a lot of detail, right? But you could, people study this their whole lives, so he's actually just touched the surface, which is quite astounding, isn't it? Right. So let's go to the next card. So the next section is about mantra and the primal kind of sound that he's going to talk about. So he says that the ancient rishis, and then Chris read this out, saw the link between nature and man and the objectification of Om. And then he was able to obtain control over all natural manifestations through the use of these mantras. And this is where like the usefulness of music comes in, because we can use it as a tool. We use Kriya as a tool to get to God. But actually, I don't know if you've read the opening pages of Guruji's Cosmic Chants book, but I urge you to do it. Don't just skip those pages, because Guruji's got some gold dust in there about the science of using cosmic chants and spiritualized sounds to attain to God. So there's that. But ragas. Go on, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, can find the button there. I was reflecting on this. It's an essential part of our practice. This isn't some sort of lip service that we're sort of paying to a subject that's of import outside of yogic practice. This is, in Kriya practice, a pillar of a necessity. You have to be able to pay attention to this, given that it brings about certain effects, having certain tones in the practice that we do in the pranayama technique. Guruji, as well as that importance, knows through the chanting that he did himself how important it is to help get people into the right state of consciousness to meditate. So he would often do chants for very long periods of time. And so this is really, whenever I think about Guruji and how he would have been, I can't decouple his presence and his impact from the chanting and from this very thing that we're talking about. So it's really not actually surprising, having read this initially for the first time 7-8 years ago, and now coming back to it, having studied Guruji's life, it's not surprising as to why he paid so much attention to it.
Yes, that example, the famous example, is the one in Carnegie Hall, isn't it, Mike? What chant did he play for? How many? Was it 2 or 3 hours?
Yeah, wasn't that Oh God Beautiful?
It was. It was good. 1-0 to Mike. Well done. Yes, it was.
Scored.
1 hour, it says in the book, for 1 hour and 25 minutes, and thousands of voices in the entire audience chanted "Oh God, beautifully, beautiful," in the divine atmosphere and joyous praise. But yes, so as he left the stage, it says that kept on singing. That's how connected they were to the music and the sound. And let's hear a little bit more from Dr. Sriram Parusharam about the connecting to the raga and the importance and the significance of connecting to the sound.
So the word enters the space of the music. Doesn't exist as a separate entity. This is not like music by Madan Mohan and lyrics by Majru Sultanpuri. Here there is, at many levels, at the level of sound itself, beyond the lexical meaning of the word melds itself as pure sound into the sound of the raga. Though it makes sense in terms of meaning, as meaning so and so, Dhyana Dharata Rishi Muni means you know that the Rishis and Munis have meditated on this concept of nada. That is what is being conveyed. But it goes beyond. And even for a person who doesn't understand the meaning of this so-called lyric, it is music. It's music as dhvani. Dhvani is a word in Sanskrit which we use as beautiful sound. You know? So that's why even if you don't understand a language, sometimes the speaker's sound is so beautiful that you can keep listening to him or her. Because you don't need meaning in terms of a transactional sense to understand or to derive beauty out of it. So the essence of design of word also within Indian classical music, and this is where the word and the raga are participating with each other. You get that sense of an absolute union of the two, where even meaning goes out of the window. Verbal meaning, linguistic meaning, everything goes out of the window. What exists is pure raga.
Hello. Welcome back. So here, Dr. Sriram explains how the word mixes and merges with the raga, and why then you can then connect to the mantra that is being said. And Guruji made some of our chants into mantras, didn't he? He said he spiritualized those songs and those words, and he had the power, of course, to do that. And that is why we can attain what the classical, the Indian classical music professionals do, and they devote their whole lives to it. There's a whole process, like just like how we get initiated and we establish a link with a guru. These musicians, they've got this. They give their whole life to this, and it's not a simple thing that we can just read, a couple of paragraphs here and hope to understand it. So it's quite an endeavor, especially if it's one which, as Guruji says, is to connect you essentially to God and have full mastery, obtain control over all natural manifestations. So it's no mean feat, right? So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be the airplane route.
Yeah, Guruji says often before chanting, why chanting is important in meditation, because like he says here, the vibrations have an effect on the human body. The human body is like a musical instrument, and when we chant, and there's the part of the chanting is devotion, and part of it is also the notes that we play, and it kind of tunes the body in this kind of way of contemplation that we want when we sit down to meditate. So it gets us ready. So it's useful as a tool for us, the music, to go deeper and to be more spiritual.
And Mike, which chant do you like to do before meditating?
I mix it up. I don't know, there's one chant that my dad taught me when I was a kid, and that's kind of always the easiest chant for me. That's the Spirit and Nature one, because I kind of learned that. He bought me like a little piano when I was a kid, and he taught me how to play Spirit and Nature on it. Not a piano, like a little children's toy that looked like a piano, that played it on there.
Wonder what.
Radha, Govinda.
Yeah.
The first time I heard that was like a revolutionary kind of feeling for me in some way. It was, if I could associate it with any word, we talked about the ragas there, it would probably be with valor. It gives it like a great strength of spirit to that song. Mine would be "On the Bubble Make Me See." Right.
Nice. There's Guruji now mentions a bit of history. He says, historical documents tell us of a remarkable power possessed by a musician named Mian Dan Sen. And Mian is actually a title. So he was given the title, and it's like a jewel, Navratna, and nine jewels. And he was 16th century court musician of Akbar the Great. Akbar, you will know that he is from the 16th century, and he unified much of India through harmonious means, actually abolishing unified everyone's hearts and minds by abolishing taxes on non-Muslims that were imposed, and appointed people from various faiths into high positions, one of the most famous ones being Birbal, who's this Hindu philosopher that he used to always have some fantastic conversations with and life lessons with, and he used to have open debates with people of all faiths, and he followed even some festivals of ancient India that Muslim rulers definitely didn't do. So he kind of respected the faith and their places of worship and their culture, which is why Akbar, out of all the Mughal emperors, he's one that's looked upon quite favorably from all sides, actually, of the debate, regardless of religion, because of that reason. So yeah, and then there's this fantastic story about Tan Sen, which says that he commanded by the emperor to sing a night raga while the sun was overhead. Tan Sen intoned a mantra that instantly caused the whole palace precincts to be enveloped in darkness. And remember, I said, that raga, the mega raga, and this is the one that he would have used. So if you go back to that section, that is the one which says that you can summon courage, and you use it in the midday in the rainy season. And so what he would have done is he would have had such mastery over this, singing this particular raga, that he caused dark clouds to summon and appear, so dark that the sunlight vanished, which is quite phenomenal. And I've got a link to a video of someone singing this chant at the temple, and he's singing it quite nicely, and then it starts raining. whether he did it or the raga did it, I'll leave you to judge. But that's the essential power.
We could use some of that in California. Yeah. We're always in drought.
This
Get
time
to it,
next year,
Mike.
you'll be a millionaire, Mike. But yeah, Tan Sen, his remains are buried in Gwalior Fort, which is just south of 100 miles south of Delhi. If you want to go there, it's a very nice fort, very nice place to visit. So yeah, and there's another footnote here. It says that folklore contains references to people having power over nature, and there's an example over here about American Indians being able to use sound rituals for rain and wind, which sounds familiar, doesn't it? And again, there's another reference to Tan Sen here. He says that he was able to quench fire by the power of his song. Again, that probably would have been a different raga, or maybe he was using the same raga to actually drench the water, drench the fire, as opposed to extinguish it by some other means, like withdrawing oxygen or something. Chris?
What I love, if you watch sort of, I don't know how you might say it, more pop culture at the moment, in a sense, where there's people talking about ancient civilizations, and how we should be looking back in history and trying to rewrite history because we think it's older than what we may have grown up to believe it to be. And part of that thinking, that narrative, is that the ancient civilizations had maybe access to different technology, access to different ways of living, and maybe more harmonious ways of living with nature. And I can't help but think about it when we're talking about this subject, in that quite possibly we are living through an age where we actually have mainstream acceptance of something approaching this, which is really exciting to see how you might be revealing this information to the mass audience.
Indeed. There's another reference here to Charles Kellogg, and it says here that he had some power as well. He was a Californian naturalist, so obviously a man after Mike's very own heart. He said he gave a demonstration of the effect of tonal vibration on fire. And this was in the early 20th century. And he gave this demonstration to New York firemen. It says, and I quote, passing a bow like an enlarged violin bow swiftly across an aluminum tuning fork, he produced a screech-like intense radio static. Instantly, the yellow gas flame, 2 feet high, leaping inside the hollow glass tube, subsided to a height of 6 inches and became a sputtering blue flare. Another attempt with the bow and another screech of vibration extinguished it. So he was using some very specific frequencies, probably a specific raga, which is why I said here earlier about Danseni, that raga that he used to quench the fire may have, been similar to the one that Charles Kellogg used. But Charles Kellogg was no ordinary person. He had quite a deep affinity to nature and trees, especially redwoods. So he was very connected to nature. And his birdsong imitation was so good that he could do it with his throat and not whistling, which is how we would mimic a robin or another bird. So it's quite nice. But apparently, I was looking up this article where this was produced, and it was in the Sydney Morning Herald. But there's another part to the quote which is quite interesting. Chris, if you can perhaps read that there.
Mr. Kellogg claimed that in future buildings would have a scientifically determined pitch with a spring for extinguishing fires tuned in from a central firehouse, where it would be produced by a much larger bow. He said that the General Electric Company was experimenting with the matter.
It sounds completely bonkers, doesn't it? But I remember studying something similar in university, how all materials and all objects and all structures, they have a natural frequency. And that is a frequency that which for some reason that whole structure responds to. And this is the kind of feeling that I get that he's talking about. Obviously we're not there yet. And I don't really know why they didn't include this latter part in the autobiography, but I guess we'll never know. Chris?
It's been shelved in some black box somewhere. In 2008, actually, I was in Belfast. I was studying in Belfast, and I was working central Belfast on a part-time job. And I was waiting for the bus, and the bus didn't come. And myself and a few others were standing there. And I was chatting to one chap who said, look, or I said, I'm going to get a taxi. Do you want to join? And, he said, yeah, sure, jumped in. And he told me that he was a scientist, that he was working for an organization in Belfast that were studying the ability to heal chronic illnesses through sound. And I'll never forget it. That little taxi ride for 5-10 minutes, whatever it was, really opened my mind to thinking about how to treat illnesses. And so maybe in the future we'll have sonic resonance ability to heal these illnesses that we have, which will be non-invasive. Sonic, really cool.
I was looking at this low frequency fire extinguishing a little bit, and apparently recently research has gone into this direction, picked that up, and there's now machines on the market that you can buy to extinguish fires with low frequencies. And there's multiple. I encourage people to just Google it. There's a ton of material out there, apparently. Maybe
the government doesn't want us to have this because there's too much insurance money that would get wasted. The economy would dip.
We don't know that.
Tinfoil hat stuff, correct?
All right. So next section, Guruji talks and goes into some heavy detail about octaves and scales, which is again quite complex if you just look at it on the surface. But if you just dig a bit deeper in terms of examples, which we'll do. It will be a bit more clearer. So Indian music apparently has 22 shrutis. So it divides the octave, the sing, 7 plus 6 notes, so 13 notes into 22 and semitones. And he says that these microtonal intervals permit fine shades of musical expression, which are not usually had on a Western chromatic scale of 12 notes. 12 then, not 13. Today I'm getting my additions wrong today. I've got Pundit Ravi Shankar telling us a bit more about this, but Mike, before you do that, would you like to say something?
Yeah, when you guys heard that, like the first thing that I thought of was, is there a piano that has an octave with 22 keys? I looked it up online, but I couldn't find any, unfortunately. But I guess there's other instruments where you don't need keys, right? Like if you use a bow on a violin or something, right?
There are other instruments, and accordions probably can do it, I imagine. Don't know.
Possibly. Yeah.
I never played one, but I imagine with various fingers and various.
With all those keys, there must be something. Yeah.
There must be something you can do. It's impossible to have. So yeah, let's hear Ravi Shankar talking about these demi-semitones and how they're used.
Then use of microtones. Sometimes microtones are not used directly, but with little we never use staccato. La 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 di di da 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 di di da da. This is not Indian music. It will be la da 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 da. It's always rounded. It's not cornered. That is very important thing. And then give feeling to it.
Panditji explains it much better than we can, but so the Western chromatic scale is apparently not it's not good enough for Indian classical music.
When he said give feeling to it, that reminded me a lot of jazz. When you also have notes in jazz, at least in theory, and then people improvise upon them, and they also call it give feeling to it. Might be similar.
You don't realize how simplistic English music is until you hear them side by side, like we just did just then. It's like, wow, we have hardly any notes. It's like we've been stripped bare. But I think there's definitely a correlation between that and the spirituality that arose from India and the subtleties, right? Even in the language, there's so many subtle variations, and attuning yourself to those. It's really beautiful, the music.
Indeed. Welcome back, Lauren.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
So Guruji now explains the 7 natural notes here. He says each of the 7 basic notes in an octave has some association with Hindu mythology, with color, with an animal, with various things. So Guruji now switches to the solfège. Is that how you say it, Mike? The Western method of singing the notes, which Lauren can do. How does it go, Lauren?
Do re mi fa sol la ti do.
Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa. So that's the equivalent of do re mi to the Indian classical. So but apparently,
bravo.
So do or sa is associated with the color green and the peacock, and re with red and the skylark, mi with gold. and goat and so on. So you've got colors, and we've got animals like herons and nightingales and horses and elephants. So there's clearly a big interconnection between the natural world and the spiritual world and the spiritual realm through these musical notes. But the one difference between do re mi and sa re ga is that in Indian classical you can move the C. So the first note sa, you can move it along the scale, and then all the other notes then have to just change. You can even move it to a sharp or a flat note and have that as your starting note, and then all the other notes have to just follow the trajectory. And the reason you do that is because each musician connects to a different frequency, a natural frequency, and that usually changes for men and women. For example, it can also change through your years in age as well. So I've got a video to explain it in a bit more detail a bit later. But Lauren?
Oh, maybe it will explain it in the video. So when people move the C, or the first note, whatever note they move it to, is that note then called C, or do they call it the note or sa? So yes. It's whatever pitch sa is. Yeah, that is sa. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, of course, then it yeah, and then of course the sharp and the flat notes also change as well.
Yeah.
So the sharp and the flat notes in Indian classical are called tivra and komal, which so when you have a rag that has a tivra or komal as the bass note, it's completely different. You'll feel a completely different tonal shift. But going back to this section here about creativity, essentially, where in terms of the connectivity between the different sounds and the meaning of the sound and the animals and all of that, Dr. Parusharam, she has also explained this in a bit of detail. So here, listen to this.
And as I create designs within that which are in time, which probably will never be repeated ever, in the sense of, if I were to sing one phrase as an exercise, I shall do it for you. This phrase would never have happened before this time, probably will never happen again in time. That is a kind of sense of infinity with respect to the raga.
So this is now referring to where Guruji talks about the scales, the 72 tatas, and how with these ragas there's infinite scope of creativity. So there's endless, Guruji says, endless improvisations around the fixed melodic scale or raga. And remember we said there was just 5 notes. So here this Pundit is going to just sing in the Dori raga, which is just 5 notes. And he's going to show you how much variation you can have and how infinite it can be.
That an artist tries to attach himself or herself to. Na, 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 na. So the bunching of notes that I just did now is exceptionally unique. Even I don't know what is the design that I'm going to travel in. The raga takes a design and I just follow my instinct with it. The sense of the atemporalness, the ephemeralness, the absolute existentialness of design is here. Instead, a design in time, a design just to experience, and a design which will never occur before or later. The idea of design is also this. Completely opposed to the idea of design as something which is static and forever, right? Because this design happens and it just like the smoke of an agarbatti just dissipates and it's no longer there to be experienced. So an idea of design is can be as temporary as this also, but equally meaningful as an experience. So design as an experience, design not as an object.
Really does a great job in explaining how much creativity you can have with just 5 notes or one raga. So he just completely made that up on the spot. He was giving a lecture and someone asked him about this question and he said, let me create one. It has never been sung before, but let me do it. And if you, to an untrained ear, it may just sound like he's just, saying any notes, but no, that it's a specific raga. It's called a Dori raga, and it's 5 notes. He's only used 5 notes in the whole of that composition that he just sang. And you can there see, like, how they say, like, you probably heard, like, if you drop a pack of cards on the floor, the order you can pick them up in, there's more combinations than there are like atoms and the molecules in the universe. Similar to like a chessboard, there's more positions, more variations to a chess game than there are molecules in the universe. And similarly, with just 5 notes here, you can see how infinite the variations can be depending on length and sound and feeling and all that good stuff. So Guruji says here, as Punditji said, he says that the Indian classical singer concentrates on the sentiment or the definitive mood of the structural theme and embroiders it to the limits of his own originality, which I think is a really superb explanation. And so this is the other thing. If you go to his concert, and if you Google, after I put the link on the description, you'll see that he's a famous singer. And you'll see he's done lots of pieces of music. But if you go to his concert, no 2 concerts will be anything alike, because this they've got so much freedom, and as long as it follows the rules of the raga, it's still the same piece. It's still to be heard at the same time of the year, the same time, to invoke the same sort of feeling. Guruji mentioned the 6 ragas and what you use each of the ragas for. And obviously he also mentioned that those 5 then go to 126 sub-ragas as well. So for the professional musicians such as this will obviously play to that. So going to Indian classical music concert is a unique experience every time, but it's not an easy experience. It says here that at each playing, he doesn't read a set of notes ever, and also when it's taught, it's very taught. It's a very oral tradition of teaching, in terms of you're taught the rules and you just play with the rules. As long as you're singing to the rules, then often you can have like a complete novice singer that has just started, but is able to match the professional musician because he's like really there. He's in the zone and he's understood the rules and he can just play with it. And when you do that, there's such a sense of like you completely forget yourself. Like, how when you have a deep meditation and you forget yourself and you forget where you are in your room and your mind is in a completely still place. The same thing happens when you're completely in the zone with a teacher as well in music. But the difference in this case, with respect to comparison to learning Western music, is that the different combinations of notes and the ragas and the melodies, not the melodies, the combination of the notes have been linked to certain emotions, feelings, times of the day, time of the year. So it's there's rules as to which ones you can and can't do at which time. So then that means that everything is supportive. You don't just do it and attain it by chance as you would if you were just really in tune with a nice piece of music. Here there's like a very evolved style, but it's very difficult. And there's Guruji says that that he doesn't confine himself to a single melodic sequence, and he stresses by repetition all its subtle microtonal and rhythmic variations. So essentially, you've got it's pretty genius to be a and you'd think that this level of genius there'd be millionaires and trillionaires. But that's not necessarily the case. You'd think that their concerts would be absolutely rammed. But again, that's not necessarily the case, because it takes some learning, doesn't it? I mean, just look at these. We've covered 10 paragraphs today, and look at how complex it is when you look at it on the surface. And the same teacher talks about this complexity here, which is where we'll have the last of Dr. Parashuram before we talk about the next episode.
Rhythmic structure, the raga structure, and the word structure all come together. They happen simultaneously. This is like three designs coming together and making one whole design. They happen very quickly. You have to be alive to that happening. They're not there for you to observe at different points in time. A Van Gogh painting, you can go again and again to the Louvre and see it 100 times, and then every time you can write something about it. But design in sound is not like that. Design in sound just happens. If you are lucky to participate and absorb, you are lucky. Otherwise, next janmas are there for us to take part in it. Yeah. So that is how it happens. That's why Indian classical music is sometimes people bemoan the fact that why there are not many audiences for Indian classical music. It requires effort, it requires an upbringing, it requires an imbibing. It is not something which is passive, which falls on your ears and you enjoy. Enjoy is a very wrong word for Indian classical music. You be with the music. So this idea of it is going to be small audiences, it is going to be, because it requires a great deal of effort. It is, I'm not sounding elitist here. This is the fact of the matter is that it requires a certain grooming of growing up in that tradition to understand what's happening.
Indeed, it does. But Guruji has gone to so much depth here that you would say that it's certainly worth the effort. And next time you go, go on, Chris. Sorry.
I was going to make a bit of a silly joke. It sounds like you have something more important to say.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's maybe similar to cricket then, is
it? Next time you go to a cricket match or an Indian classical music concert, you'll hopefully go with your eyes slightly wider open. I certainly will, because I've always avoided this topic. It's so complex, but going into this description and explanation here, Guruji's made it so lovely for us. But we can't just read this one. We actually have to see examples and see people in the profession and people that have given their whole lives to the process. Explain it and sing it and all that good stuff. Mike?
Yeah, and in order to enjoy it, you need to do some work yourself and kind of get yourself up to speed in Indian classical music. It's interesting that Guruji was able to write the cosmic chants in the Western octave. I guess every note in the Western octave corresponds to something in those 22, right? In this octave of 22. So
yeah.
He was able to find the right notes anyways, even though it was limited. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, there's something called the Bilal Raga, which has the simple notes, and so a lot of our cosmic chants are really, really simple, right? And he uses probably some of those ragas, if you can call it that.
I'm really glad we actually covered this section, because I think, to your point, Greg, it's there's a lot in there, and if you're a layperson that doesn't really have a real grasp of music and the theory behind music, apart from if you enjoy singing in the shower or something, this can kind of seem like something you almost skip over, when I first read it, I think I was more in that camp, but I kind of didn't really understand the relativity to what it was that we do or doing in yoga practice. But studying it and looking at it again in more detail and going slower through it, I have a massive appreciation for it now. So I'm really glad we did it and followed the exercise.
Out of interest, Lauren, you know, you sang Do Re Mi. How would you sing Do sharp, C sharp in Do Re Mi? Is there such a way to do it?
Oh, you're testing me now. I used to know each note and be able to sing them. I don't think I can do that now.
Oh, but can you? You can do it. Is there a way to like? Is there actually a thing to sing the sharp and the?
Well, you can
flat
sing in
notes?
different keys, for example. So I could start on a C sharp for Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do and just go up that way. But I'm not sure I could do it right now.
No.
But yeah, I think it's possible. It's just singing in different keys, right? Yeah.
Because if it's a sharp sound, we'll say tivra or komal, or so we'll say we'll donate the letter or the sound sa with the sharp or flat, and then when you write it, there's a notation as well when you write it.
I'm not actually sure if when I sang that I actually sang the C. I don't know.
It's fine,
I was thinking this before. I was like,
it's fine.
Not sure. So I'll be interested if I actually remembered it or not.
I'll get my tuner out when we're looking at this episode.
Send me back to singing lessons, I think.
No, it's good. Go on, Mike.
Oh no, I think when I did music, and it was really long ago, and there's some vague memories, but there's a Do Re Mi, and then you can do the same thing with all flats or with all sharps, right? I think we've been doing that in that sense, but not like putting them all together in one.
Do you want to have a go, Mike?
No.
You know, Lauren stepped in just in time, and she wasn't able.
Yeah.
Lauren wasn't able to know that I had asked her to do this, but she did it anyway, like a champ. I asked Mike, Lauren's not going to, don't know if she's going to make it. Can you, he's like, he nearly bit my head off.
No, I respectfully declined.
I mean, to be fair, I'd looked at the, the cards before, so I knew that it was coming. So I can't take full credit for the spontaneity.
That's why she was late. She was practicing.
Yeah. I was just practicing over and over.
But regarding the you didn't know if you were on C there, Lauren. In India, you always see, you know, when this Dr. Sriram Parashuram was singing and speaking, he had a Dhampur drone note playing in the background. So that's you can't go you can't go wrong if you've got the bass note running in the background. So if you had, do we ever use? I don't think you ever use that if you're singing. You rely on having an instrument with you, don't you? I suppose.
It depends. I know we've used it at the centre for some of the kirtans.
No, I'm saying for Western music, like a choir singer, how would they know that? You know, if there's no instrument, how would they know that they're all going to be in the right key?
Yeah, well, some people are blessed to be pitch perfect, so they know the exact start note. You're just expected to know and remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It's hardcore.
Every day I feel like it. Yeah, it's different. Anyway, I digress. Lauren, what's happening in the next episode?
So the next episode, Guruji talks about the talas, which are the time scales. So we're going to learn a bit more about that. And also the emphasis that Hindu music has on the voice rather than on instrumentation, as you were touching on there, Priyank, and the purpose of the music, probably much different to Western music. This is more about the harmony of the soul and singing the praises of God, right? So we have that. And then we also have the explanation of the effect that that type of music has on us, with the chakras and all of that. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be very informative. So yeah, I'll see you then.
Exciting. Yeah. Thank you very much, listeners and viewers, for bearing with us. A very technical subject. Hopefully we did it some justice. we shall see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.